It appears that Starbucks is the latest foreign operator in China to come under the zealous scrutiny of China Central Television's consumer investigations. The state-run channel, known usually as CCTV, recently ran a report criticising Starbucks for selling its products more expensively in China than in other markets. It compared the cost of a tall latte at around $4.40 in Beijing, which was 40 cents less in London and over $1 cheaper in Chicago. The report also pointed out that mugs sold in Starbucks in China cost more than in the US, even though they're actually made here. It then went on to imply that Starbucks was overcharging Chinese customers, and it quoted the company's most recent results, which showed an operating profit of over 36% in the China-Asia-Pacific region compared to 22% in the US and just 3% in some other markets. A Starbucks spokesperson responded, saying that the higher prices in China were a reflection of higher local costs for employee training and sourcing and differences in Chinese consumer behaviour. He also pointed out that the company's prices in China were comparable or indeed lower than competitors in the same market here. So what have Chinese net users to say in the wake of the report? Well, to find out, let's join our researcher Esther Dong in the newsroom. Now, Esther, CCTV certainly seems to be on quite a crusade on behalf of the Chinese consumer against rapacious, mostly foreign companies in China. Now, it's targeted KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Apple, Starbucks. Indeed, this is the second time for Starbucks. And now from the latest reports, it appears Samsung is the latest one to fall under CCTV's consumer microscope. But staying with Starbucks for the moment, are Chinese net users suitably grateful for this defence of their interests?
Well, no, I don't think this has got the response that CCTV expected. Surprisingly, the majority of users have slammed the coverage, and most of the anger seems to be based on one thing. They feel CCTV decided to focus its efforts on complaining about expensive coffees, which the vast majority of Chinese people are never going to buy. And at the same time, they carefully avoid looking into issues that may be politically sensitive but really matter to the ordinary man in the street. This complaint from Luo Xiaoming on Sina.com is quite typical. CCTV ignores serious issues that affect the common people's daily life. The high cost of basic necessities like housing, gasoline, and telecommunications. The whole idea is to divert public attention and conceal those who are really fleecing Chinese people of their hard-earned money. And as 心情有些落寞 points out, there is the matter of priorities. We don't have to drink coffee, but we do have to live in an apartment. Well, this anonymous poster has a sarcastic take on it. CCTV always carries free advertising for foreign brands to ensure they get more exposure. And the poster called Wu Sheng Cun Fu is more direct in suggesting CCTV's motives. Some Chinese company is probably losing out to foreign ones in the market, so CCTV decides to fan the flames of nationalism. But that tactic may have worked in some cases, like this poster Fu Xiaoxiao from Shanxi, who says, all these foreign brands are occupying every inch of China's territory, while the Chinese have to bow before their sky-high prices. Neither China nor the Chinese people want this. CCTV has done us a favor by speaking out.
OK, so the reports appear to have backfired somewhat if CCTV was hoping for public gratitude for its efforts. What about the points, though, mentioned in that report? What responses are there to the suggestions that Starbucks is actually overpriced, for example?
Well, lots of net users are quite happy to admit that, of course, Chinese Starbucks are expensive. But many also feel the accusations lack merit and say they involved no real investigation beyond looking at a menu. There are also plenty who feel CCTV needs a lesson in market economics. This poster Li Jun on Sohu.com says, a price doesn't equal cost plus reasonable profit. Price is decided by competition in an open market. Starbucks has a booming business in China despite high prices. That only implies that it's a successful operation. And Ye Tan remarks, a continuous investment is a necessity for a big brand. This includes advertising, design, and creating an atmosphere, quite apart from the cost of raw material. And it's not easy for Starbucks to maintain standards and service to keep Chinese customers happy. And a poster on iPhone.com has another criticism. CCTV also failed to mention that other less well-known cafes in China sell their products at similar or even higher prices. Well, this poster on QQ.com claims that Starbucks has to cover the actual expenses of running a business in China. The tax misery index in China ranks amongst the worst in the world. Rent and logistics costs are sky high in China too. And all businesses have to go through complicated bureaucratic procedures just to operate here. Of course, all these expenses are eventually shifted onto the customer.
Right. Now one thing that Starbucks mentioned in its response is that the coffee culture is quite different in China to other countries, and that this entails more expenses. For example, more Chinese consumers stay in to drink and will linger longer over a coffee, so you need bigger and more expensive premises. Is that aspect being discussed by net users?
Yeah, sure. I think net users are pretty clear that Starbucks business here and customers' habits are different from elsewhere. Most agree that Starbucks is marketed as a very different product in China. It's definitely high-end, and it's associated with the well-off and fashionable market sector. And this is reflected in the price too. As this poster says, Starbucks is quite everyday in the US. But in China, it's mainly aimed at the wealthy or those who want to be thought of as wealthy. And this poster, 陋室拥语 from Guangdong, agrees. Starbucks appeals to those who want to show off their high social status through fancy foreign brands. Its price strategy suits them perfectly. And another poster says, Starbucks here is considered a great place for business negotiations and meeting socially with friends. And this poster on Weibo.com adds, Chinese like to belong to exclusive cliques, and higher prices ensure that only a select group can afford Starbucks. For example, some of these people would actually reject iPhones if they lowered the price. Well, this poster 纸上建筑 on Sina.com points out another difference. The operating model of cafes in the Western world is smaller margins on greater value. Customers at Starbucks there order lots of stuff in a short time. But the turnover is much lower here, since Chinese consumers will often get a single cup of coffee and then sit there for a whole afternoon. And I'll just finish up with another point from Starbucks' response to the report, which says, the operation costs in China are higher than in the US because the business scale in China is much smaller and still at the primary stage.
Okay, thanks for that, Esther. And that was China Tech researcher Esther Dong with some online reaction to the latest expose on China Central Television of Starbucks, in this case, for alleged overpricing, an expose which doesn't seem to have met with the response that might have been expected. Next up on China Tech, some of the top trending phrases on China's most popular search engines.